Let's go over an example of an import quota. One difference between the import quota and import tariff is that quota is a limit on the number, not the price, the number of imports in the country. Another difference that is quite substantial is that quota rent is the revenue that does not go to the government, but to the producers of the foreign country that exports the good. This is a small country, which means that it does not have any effect on the world supply or the price in the world of the product. Suppose the country opens to trade and sees a lower world price, and of course, it will start importing the good, and the import will be equal to QD1 minus QS1. So it's this distance here. However, now the country decides to limit its imports by imposing a quota in order to protect its producers. This quota can be anything. So currently, the amount of imports is this whole distance here. So the quota could be, this much of the imports, or it could be this much of the imports. It is decided by the importing country. Suppose this is the amount of imports that the importing country wants to have. What this does is it shifts the domestic supply to the right, which becomes now a total supply, and the difference between S domestic and S total is the amount of the quota. What happens now is that domestically, this world price is no longer the price. Price keeps going up, up, up until it reaches the new domestic price. And so we also move along this new supply curve until it meets the domestic demand curve. So this is our new equilibrium, and this is our new quantity demanded at this point. QS2 is domestic supply, QD2 is domestic demand, and the difference is the new imports. We can show that the import quota leads to social losses. If we start from the world price and we go to domestic price, so we start with open trade in which the price is equal to PW, and we go to the quota where the price is P domestic. What is the amount of everything that was lost? So P world, this was the price line. Domestic price, the new price after the quota, this is the price line. So the amount of consumer surplus lost is DEFG. So it's this area here. Producer surplus regains area D. The government revenue does not exist because, remember, import quota, revenue from the quota does not go to the government, unlike with the tariffs. So there is no government revenue. So there is a social loss to the country. And the social loss is equal to this area E, F, and G. Social loss or deadweight loss to the country. Let's show what happens when an import quota is imposed. In a large country, this will lead to an ambiguous change, which means that it could result in a loss or it could result in a gain. Here we're going to show what happens when we go to from open trade, where the price is PW, world price, to a quota, where the price is actually PW new plus quota rent. So it's an additional amount added to the price because of this quota. We can show what happens to the consumer, producer surplus, and total surplus when we go from the world price, which is right here, from open trade, to this new price, which is right here. So you can see that the consumer surplus that is lost is equal to areas D, E, F, G. And the producer surplus actually regains area D. The government revenue is non-existent. That's because the government does not charge, it doesn't get revenue from the quotas. And the amount of quota rent is equal to the difference in price because of the quota rent times the amount of new imports. So it's this area F plus J. So somebody does collect quota rent, but they're not part of our total surplus in our country because they're not collected by the importing country. They are collected by the foreign producers. So social loss or gain will be equal to this area J, but minus areas E and G. So we're gaining area J, but we're losing areas E and G. And depending whether J is larger than E and G or smaller than areas E and G, we can have a gain or a loss. This is why we say that an import quota in a large country results in an ambiguous change.